we're taping.
Oh, we're taping?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know this was all.
Dave has on light blue running shoes with geometrical patterns. I like them.
They're not running shoes. This is the thing.
They look like running shoes.
They do, which is what drew me to them. Well, I was at my sister's house outside of Boston, and her my nephew, her son, that's how it works, had these shoes, same ones I'm wearing, and they are Trae Young, who I had no idea who that was. He's a basketball player, apparently. I literally only can name LeBron James and cannot name a single other pro basketball player.
Dr. J?
No, I mean...
Oh, of the present?
Present.
Okay.
Oh, I was about to start naming people too. Actually.
No, I can name people who have played professional basketball very well. But yeah, I tend to only know pro athletes outside of hockey if they've somehow done something outside of the sport.
Right.
Made headlines, usually for something horrible. But anyway, he had these shoes, and I was like, I like those shoes. And then months later, I bought some, and they're the Trae Young Ice Trae shoes, Icy or something.
What brand?
I think Adidas, maybe. I don't even know.
I like them.
They have the polar bear from like when you buy ice, you know, the coolers.
Yes,
I think heel, and that's all it took.
I think that you had, because you have several different looks. You have your performance look when you're wearing the jacket, but I think this fits your about town casual
and my
look.
Incognito look,
yes,
which
I agree.
So many people you guys see it and know that I dress in a casual manner, but there are many people who get really disappointed to see me dress this way
with no ascot.
Yeah, with like any sneakers or because the brand is no sneakers and no no t-shirts.
Do other people expect you to just have a helmet on all the time?
Then there's the people that when I don't have a helmet on. So there's a full range.
I was just saying,
but jeans and sneakers and a t-shirt is not as unacceptable. That's like a dog park look that I have. And you guys get the dog park look.
I was saying to Cindy, the reason we were talking about Roland S. Howard was I was recording a band all weekend, and
who's Roland S. Howard?
He was in the birthday party.
He was also in Crime in the City Solution, and just with Nick Cave a long time. His first.
I know the name, but I don't know anything beyond.
From Australia.
There's a subset.
I mean, that just goes.
There's like a subset of people in the guitar Venn diagram for whom I think he's considered the best.
The king.
Whoa.
He's one of my favorites.
So he's cooler than Warren Ellis.
Yes.
To some.
Yes. And dead.
And he's dead, which is as a key to coolness.
He can no longer do anything uncool.
I mean, I can't wait until I die so I can see how much cooler I become.
I no more.
From beyond, from another realm, whatever realm that is.
Free at last. But so this dude this weekend had a white 1966 Jaguar. Tom. What's wrong with you? He had a white 1966 Jazzmaster.
Yeah.
With a matching headstock. And so it had the bound neck and the block inlays.
Yeah.
And it was so cool looking that
you went and bought one.
I didn't, but I spent much of the day when I was supposed to be listening to them record on reverb.
Oh, yeah.
Just like
you guys got it. How do you go on on your phone?
On my phone.
You're secretly and you're like, that was great the way you just played that.
So
this band is going to hear this because this podcast is going to be so popular. Oh my gosh.
Steve Vai.
Steve Vai is the kind of guitar player I call, his style, I call it, look, Ma, no hands. And you know, what I mean by that is, remember when you were a little kid, you'd go climb the tree, and you'd stand on the skinniest little branch, man, the one that was guaranteed to snap off at some point in the very near future, and you'd stand on that one and go, look, Ma, no hands. Well, that's the way Stevie approaches his solos. That's the way Stevie approaches everything that he's playing on that axe.
Imagine a world where only guitars mattered. Dave and I have a collective memory of you. We both saw the Skyscraper tour, the David Lee Roth Skyscraper tour. Dave saw it twice.
Twice.
Wow. Okay.
And I have a memory of when you guys were performing the Van Halen song On Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Now, did this happen, or have I created it in my mind that you took the guitar off, threw it on the ground, and played the solo with the guitar in front of you? You were on your knees and you played the guitar solo like tapping in front of you. Did that happen, or have I created that in my mind?
Well, what I do recall was I may have put it on the ground, but usually we had these big ego ramps. I mean, the stage was enormous.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was like a football field or something. And on the sides of it, there was these risers. So in that song, I would take the guitar and throw it on the riser and play it like this.
Amazing.
The ham was cooking.
But no, I mean, look, you may sort of in your mind think of it as ham, but like I'm telling you, I've seen a bazillion rock shows since then. And that moment is completely burned into my mind. So it was one of it was one of like the best. It was one of the greatest. Thank you for that memory.
Well, thank you. You know, I think it harkens back to when I was a little kid and I got a hold of a tennis racket.
Oh.
And I would stand in my bedroom in the mirror. I had a big mirror. Me and my brother shared the room, and we had two beds. You know, my bed was on one side and his was on the other. And I would just blast my favorite rock music. I was like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. And I had that tennis racket, and I was the biggest rock star. I was a roomer in my own room. And that tennis racket got played like this on the walls.
Oh, man. And then
It's like people with the broom when they first start.
If it wasn't a tennis racket, it was a broom. I don't know. You know, it's like kids are they create fantasies and then they will act them out or project them into the future. And I just loved rock music, and I loved the idea of running around like that and having the guitar, and just it was more like I probably would have been good in a circus. You know?
it all worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all worked out.
And this is, if I can go full Chris Farley talking to Paul McCartney, back to the Skyscraper tour. This one of the times I saw it, I took my first girlfriend who had broken up with me, but we were hanging out in that way that we're in a torturous way to me. And and this was, when you would go wait and you'd sleep out to wait and to buy the tickets to the concert.
Oh yeah,
and
I did that.
And we got like third or fourth row, something like this, at Blossom Music Center outside of Cleveland. And she had braided her hair the side of her head in a way that was just like trailblazing look at the time. And we were right in front of you, and we were freaking out, and you saw her and you waved and you said, "I like your hair," your mouth, "I like your hair." And then she
oh, you're that guy.
I'm the guy. She almost passed out.
I remember you.
Then you threw a pick. I got the pick and I gave it to her. Never saw her again. No, I saw her again. But just a magical memory that I just remembered right now as we're talking. I just had to.
Well, I have a pic with your name on it.
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming to the shows. That was a good time back then. You know, those shows, I remember them all very well. You know, I remember the whole traveling youth gang and how much fun it was to be out there like that. It was great times.
I mean, and there was there was a guy whose job back then was to create backstage festivals at every. Oh, just so I have to also thank you. I'm the co-author of that book, Nothing But a Good Time, the history of like 80s hard rock. And you gave us a great interview for that. So you're like, I have no memory of that.
He won't shut up about this.
I won't shut up about
it.
But yeah, in there and in doing research, it seems like that tour, there was like a guy whose whole job was to create a backstage atmosphere that was different every night. Is that correct?
A couple of guys. Well, Dave Roth, he really knew how to throw a party, I got to say. Every night after the show, we had the hospitality room, which, you know, we played these arenas and the backstage areas were, you know, they were huge. They were robust. They had all sorts of rooms and they would find a hospitality room and Dave would basically bring on tour a virtual, you know, a backstage area, you know, so, and then they'd set it up and it was these beautiful kind of like rich, dark blue curtains that surrounded the entire room. And then there was tables of, you know, food and tables of alcohol and beer and all that stuff. And the biggest PA system. I mean, it was huge and it was just, we'd put on rock music and there'd be about 50 or 60 people at every party. And it was just amazing. I mean, it was just one of those kind of 80s phenomenons. And it was so nice to be a part of it. Just to, you know, I had to bring my tennis racket with me.
I mean, that
really lived the dream.
Dave and I were texting earlier and your 80s between, you know, Zappa, Alcatrazz, Roth, Whitesnake, plus being in Crossroads, plus play. Was it difficult to stay? I mean, you're a person who's very sort of defensive of your creativity. Was it hard to sort of like stay tethered to the planet a little bit at that point? Or?
Well, no, I mean, everything was, it felt like it was being handed to me on a silver platter. You know, I mean, I obviously had personal music intentions with the kind of music that I like to make as a solo artist, which is pretty different than any of the situations I've been in with bands. If you listen to my records, Passion and Warfare and even Flexible and all of my solo records, they're really, you know, my goal was to create a catalog of undiluted music, you know, for whatever that's worth. I just had a particular idea and I loved the studio. I love the recording process. I like engineering. I'm an okay engineer and I've done all my records. I produce them. So that part of my career was very fulfilling. But I'm also, you know, like I say, the kid jumping around in the mirror as a, you know, teenager with a racket. And these rock bands I was in, they really supplied that opportunity. So something like Frank Zappa, that was more of my musical side that came out and I had that opportunity and that was great. I embraced it. You know, I didn't feel like I was compromising anything. Because I would go home and do a little solo stuff. And then when the Alcatrazz thing came, it was kind of a great opportunity because I like that metal-y music. I wouldn't make a career out of it, you know, but I loved tasting it. And also it was a great opportunity because Yngwie was in the band. And then when the Dave Roth gig came, I mean, that was the most coveted guitar gig in the world, you know. And I like that music. I like that. I mean, obviously you can see it on the stage. It gives you an opportunity to be that ham, you know, and I just love that. Same thing with Whitesnake, same thing with Crossroads. These things just came to me. and they came at like perfect. It seemed like perfect timing, and I never felt like I was compromising anything, because if I did, I would just move. When I left Dave or Frank or any of them, it was because there was a pull to go in another direction. So that served me well, and it continues to. So, like, for instance, I'm going on tour right now. I'm preparing for this Beat tour, which we kick off in September. We got like 62 shows, and this is a completely different thing than my solo music. We're performing music from the 3 King Crimson records of the 80s with Adrian, Belew, Tony Levin, and Danny Carey from.
Have you started rehearsals yet?
We start in a couple of weeks.
Wow!
But I got I've had to. This was another little great opportunity. I mean, I would never do a gig like this if I didn't want to. Why? At my age and where I'm at, I'm so lucky. These things come along. I'm like, yes, please, I'll take that. And the King Crimson thing is. It's so interesting because it's not Zappa, it's not Roth, it's kind of somewhere in between. But I took that gig because I love the music, and I wanted to, take 6 months and experience that. It's very challenging. So I really live a charmed life. All this great stuff comes, and I just do it.
There was a interview with you right when Beat was announced. Just for our listeners, Vai, Danny Carey, Adrian Belew, and Tony Levin will be performing music from the 3. Is this correct? The 3 80s King Crimson records.
Yeah.
And it was the 4 of you being interviewed, and you said, like, I'm gonna have to woodshed this stuff, and you said it with such joy. Whereas my reaction to any task is terror, but it was a real purity to your, like, I'm going to get to go shed, like that. It was like almost a gift that you had, like, this reason to go shed. So you still have that, like, I'm going to lock, like, how many hours a day have you been working on it?
Right, just every moment I can, and it's good. It's working. It's working really well. And the thing is, when something like Beat came along, you look at a situation and you can see if it's something within your grasp, something that you can do. So for me, I looked at the Beat gig, and it was, we're talking Robert Fripp's guitar parts when he was 35, which is, he was just a beast, he was a total phenom, and he created this style of playing the guitar that's just death defying, and I saw that, and it was kind of the idea of being able to do it. And of course I have to, I do it my way. It was here, and I knew that I could do it if I spent the time, and the music was so good. So that becomes a challenge, and that becomes the boss.
Right.
Like I want that. Everybody knows that feeling. You see something, it's within your reach, and you just can't wait to experience it. So that happened. Now, if I looked at a gig and it was like here, and I wouldn't take it. And there's many gigs like that because it just doesn't fit my style.
Have you ever actually not taken a gig because you thought you couldn't do it? That seems unlikely to me with you.
Well, I've taken gigs because I knew I could do it if I put the work in, but I wasn't interested because it wasn't the kind of work that I was, I wasn't interested in playing the stuff, so if somebody said, okay, Steve, we're going to go out and do a tour playing jazz music, bebop. Could I do it? I'd have to work pretty hard. I think I could. It wouldn't sound like a conventional bebop player. You might have some broken legs on the dance floor, but I wouldn't take it because it's not. You know what I mean? There's not a pull.
When you're doing something like this, doing like Fripp's parts, is there, I mean, can you quantify the ratio of Vai to Fripp that you try and put into the sort of your performance of it? You know, like how much
The Vai Fripp ratio.
the Vai Fripp ratio. That's a
The Fripp-a-Vai meter.
Yes.
Well, you know, a musician, a performer is not going to be able to escape themselves. You know, you who you are, your idiosyncrasies will flow into what you do. So when I listen to the Fripp stuff, my goal is to respect the notes. You know, I mean, I want to get the notes because that's the song, and that's what the fans are expecting. You know, you want to also, you know, make the fans comfortable, and fans of progressive rock like that are pretty fiercely loyal. You know, they don't mess around.
That's a very kind way to put it.
Yeah, right. Yes. And I'm not really I haven't really been a part of that circle my whole career. So, you know, I want to respect the notes that Robert played. Now, I don't play like him, his style. So I have to figure out certain ways to make them more my style. And I've been doing that. It's working.
Wow. How many songs in the set?
Probably about a little over 2 hours worth. I don't know the exact number. Maybe like 19 or something. Enough to you know, get your heart beat going.
And because for people like us, you know, we like to talk about equipment because it distracts at least me from skill.
Practicing.
Yeah, from practicing. What is, do you have have you put together a rig for this that's different? Like, do you have a...
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another fun part, and another reason why I wanted to do the gig is it allows me to really rehash my rig, because it has to reflect the music. You know, it needs to be able to work for the music. And there's a lot of things that those guys used, like the guitar synthesizers.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They were really the first. I mean, those three records, those three King Crimson records, Beat, Three of a Perfect Pair, and Discipline, they were monoliths. I mean, when you listen to those records, there's four guys sitting in a room playing live, basically, you know, with a couple of overdubs here and there. But they laid these tracks down as a band, and they're just miraculously constructed. And I heard them on the radio in the 80s. You know, that's how I heard the group. Imagine that. You know, all this intensely complex yet beautifully melodic music was on the radio. But one of the things that they did back then, besides just musically being avatars, you know, I mean, the way that they constructed the songs with, you know, all these polymetric ideas, the technology that they introduced with the guitar synthesizers was unique at the time. Nobody did it. And they didn't just do it. You know, it's not like, here's a note on the record, I use the guitar synth. I mean, these guys built tapestries and giant clouds of sound with synthesizers.
And those were like impossible to use, right? I mean, that was like some
big pain in the ass, man. You know, they required like a surgery on your guitar, and I had, you know, I've had those synthesizers through the years, but I was more of a guy that would go, oh, here's a note on the record, right. You know. But now I've gotten the latest synthesizer gear, and I've got two of them. I got the Roland SY 1000 and the 800 GM 800, and I'm using both of those. So this is it's very exciting to play with these sounds and to incorporate them into the rig. But the rig itself now is, I've been going through all these different amplifiers. People are sending me stuff, and I'm comparing everything to my comfort level with my own synergy modules, which is, you know, the brain of everything is going to be based on, or the sound, I should say, what kind of preamp
right.
you
the
use.
Synergy has different, it's like it's different modules that you can put into into a rack, right? Like different voiced preamps.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're the modules themselves are actual preamp sections from various amplifiers. So for instance, they have Friedman, they have Soldano, they have Marshall style. They got so much, so many. And this company, Boutique Audio, they actually build these boutique amplifiers for many of the.
Oh, they do they do Friedman and Soldano, like they're building. Oh, it's that company does this stuff too.
Yeah, so they build that stuff for Dumble. From what I understand, they build a lot of the amplifiers for these companies. So when they create these modules, the actual blueprints for the preamp of a particular amp is exactly what these modules are. So if I have a kind of like a Soldano module or a Diesel, there's so many, Vox, Friedman, it's the actual preamp section of those amplifiers. Tubes, they've got tubes in them and everything. So you can have tons of them strung together. I have 4. So I'm using 4 modules. So I have 4 separate amplifiers with 2 channels in each. And with this beat gig, I'm using them all, for every, each song has, because each one of these each one of these preamps has a sound, and it has the sound that's reflective of the amp that that it has the schematic for. There's no modeling, this is real analog stuff. And I also, because one of the amplifiers that Robert and Adrian used back then was the Roland Jazz Chorus. And I had one since they came out.
Sort of in the 80s, was that everybody's clean sound? You had one in your Marshall or whatever?
Well, rock players didn't really use them as much, but guys but most players, a lot of players did, because it was like plug and play and it just sounds great. It's a stereo amplifier. So you hit the chorus switch and it was just a perfect chorus. You didn't have much choice for anything except here's your chorus. It's on. Now it's off, but it was beautiful. And the amp was just very good for stylistic type situations. Clean. Like if you have a gig and you're going to play a wedding or you're going to do something, that's the amp. It was consistent. And Robert and Adrian used those, and they did these lines and stuff together that were very synchronized, but off. It's hard to explain. It's polymetric stuff, And they both use these amps, so it created this sound. So I got one of those in the rig. I don't know how much I'm going to use it, because when I hit the button for my rig, it has a sound. And then when I hit the button for the jazz chorus, it's like, I'm so used to my big, robust analog sound. I feel a little.
I understand completely.
I wanted to ask about Public Image Ltd.
Love that record. Oh.
But what was so cool about it is that you did that, and then there was like me and my best friend Tim Parnan, we were really omnivorous sort of with our music. So we're like, oh, we love Steve Vai, and I can't think of anything else like that where someone just
it's like we're no intersectionality theoretically, as they say now.
Yeah, yeah. It was just such a wild, and it was just like a rumor, because you couldn't look it up on the internet. We were like, no, he's on this record. It's amazing.
How did that was that through Laswell? Bill Laswell? How did you get that call?
Yeah, it was through Bill Laswell. Well, it was a friend of mine, Cliff Coltrari, who was friends with Bill. And Cliff called me. I was in Alcatrazz at the time. And of course, the Sex Pistols and Lydon were part of my
Oh,
diet.
really? So you were
teenage. I mean, I listen. I gravitated more towards rock, but I explored everything, and especially when I went to school in Boston at Berkeley, the punk scene was exploding, new wave and stuff like that. So the Sex Pistols, and they were the iconic foundation for that whole thing. And so I got a call from my friend Cliff, and he said Bill Laswell's making this record for Leiden, for Pill. And it was very interesting because they had Ginger Baker, and it was African inspired. African music has it's got this particular color in it and this particular groove. And if you listen, it's beautiful music. I'm talking about traditional, cultural. I love studying cultural music. I made a record, Alive in an Ultra World, where I actually studied cultural music from all these different countries, Japan, all over. And this record was sort of based on that tribal African kind of music, but with Johnny Lydon, and that was another thing that I said, yes, please, I'll have one of those, And it was a bit of a challenge because I was on tour with Alcatrazz, and I didn't have much time, so I did the guitar parts on that record in 2 half days at Electric Ladyland. And another great guitar player was on that record. Is this guy Nicky Scopolidis.
Oh, wow.
And he put some of those guitars on the record, the rhythm stuff. But it was a great experience. It moved really quick. And the reason I really enjoyed it was I didn't have to do anything but just play. I just showed up and I said, okay, as a matter of fact, there was one song where I didn't hear it. And I said, and Bill put the tape up and he goes, okay, on this, I just want you to solo through this section. I said, okay, let me take a listen. And he says, no. He hits the record button and said, just play. And he leaves the room.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there. I hadn't heard the song. And I just played. I can't remember which one it was. And I just played as I was listening. And the song ends and he comes back and he goes, how did it go? And I, you know what? I think it went pretty good. It's actually really cool. And I said, just take a listen. And he goes, no, let's move on.
Which song was that? Do you remember that?
I can't remember. It might have been Rise or something.
Oh, wow. Just the single, right?
Oh, man.
Yeah, it might have been. I'd have to listen to the record again. But
was he there? Was John Lydon there?
No. Lydon came in the last night and listened to everything. And in his inimitable way, looked up to looked at me and goes, "It's fucking great, man." So I felt like I did okay. And he actually asked me if I wanted to join the band. And again, at the time, I was already committed to something, but that would have been interesting because I got to hand it to him for even considering that, because I'm so removed from that audience in a sense. Of course, it would have worked and it would have been great. But when I went to see him play when he was in town with touring that record, I remember being in the audience and feeling like, one of these things is different than the other. But it was great. Now, the record is just one of those wonderful things to have in your catalog because it's a unique record.
Yeah.
It's not a punk record. It's not a rock record. It's so great, because it's a real fusion of styles. And then you got Lydon doing his thing on top of it. It's just a great record. So happy that happened.
Yeah, I still listen to it.
One of my favorite records
Really?
that I've played on. Yeah.
That's great. And it all had all in the space of 12 hours, basically, of track.
Less than that.
Did you have because I always ask you about gear, but did you have your stuff there? Like, did you have Cartage bring your amps and stuff, or were you just like using borrowed stuff?
I showed up with my guitar, and whatever they had there, I just plugged into and went. Because it was like, okay, you got to fly in, do this, and then you got to fly out and do a gig that night, And then the second time I had a day off, so I flew in and I had the second half of the day, and then Leiden came in, and that's how that went. And the interesting thing was, as you mentioned, the fact that I was on that record could only have survived as rumor at the time because there was no internet, and the record had no credits. Like the album was called Album, the cassette was called Cassette. Yeah. I wonder what the stream would be called.
Was it difficult when you did Crossroads to throw the game? Like, I always felt that your character destroyed Ralph Macchio's, but you played both parts. So you had to make yourself lose when you do the guitar battle. Like, was that... Did you?
But then he beats himself, though. He can't lose.
That's true.
But
see that? I haven't worked into the design. I can't
lose.
What? That was another great kind of thing that was just handed to me on a silver platter. And the reason why it was okay to lose like that was because I discovered it's a movie. It's fake.
Yeah.
And that was one of the hardest things for me because I knew after doing that I had a good time, but I didn't want to be an actor, because first of all you need a particular skill. I mean, actors are actors because they're cut out to be actors, just like musicians are, kind of cut out to be musicians. And I dabbled with it, but I never felt sincere about acting because it was fake. I like great actors, but whenever I'm acting, I'm feeling like, come on, who are you kidding? This isn't real. You're not you're acting and you're not very good at it, So, but that role suited me because I did have at that time a pretty nefarious streak that I could call on. And when I read the script, I knew how to, I kind of got the idea of what they wanted and what they needed, because the duel was laid out in the script. The guy was writing, and then this guy did this and this guy did this. He was imagining what a guitar duel would look like. And I read it and I thought, yeah. But what was happening when they were trying to find somebody for the part and all, it turned into like a jam, right. Where this guy play, and then it's like and they didn't have any ham, right. I like theater, I always liked theater and drama, but I love melody more than anything, so I looked at it and I said, well, so I kind of worked on it with Rye, and when it came to the climax, I just knew, okay, this is a movie. People are going to be watching it. Most people don't understand what would constitute the winner in a guitar battle, of that level. I mean, I'm playing my ass off, we,
right. Yes, we, yes.
So, I just kind of built the parts and Rye,
Right,
and
who played
kind of did all the slide stuff is performed by Ry Cooder. But when it got to the final riff where Jack Butler has to blow up, I knew what it needed because I read the script and it kind of tells you. So what was interesting though, when I made the actual Eugene's Trick Bag, the piece that Eugene plays that beats Jack Butler, I knew that it needed to look fascinating because the audience, they want to be wowed. They want to say, "Oh my God, look at that guy play!" So I created this riff, and the script said Eugene breaks into this riff that's a classical style because that's how he beats Jack Butler, because he was trained classically and Jack doesn't have any of that. So, and I was Jack Butler, obviously. So I had to create something that had a classical feel, but also melded into the blues, but also looked impossible for Jack. So, whenever you're doing this kind of thing on a guitar, it looks impossible and fascinating. So I designed these riffs for Eugene, Ralph, that made it look fascinating, and it worked. And to Ralph Macchio's credit, the guy worked really hard in pantomiming to kind of get it right. He had a lot of help with I worked with him, but Arlen Roth was an incredible contributor in that movie to many aspects of the guitar playing, and he mentored Ralph through a lot of that stuff too. And Ralph did a great job, because even today I have people come up to me and say, I can't believe what a great guitar player Ralph is. And did he really kick your ass? Like,
I mean,
yes, he did. Imagine if he was a guitar player.
You in that movie, and I know I'm getting really deep into Crossroads, but I can't help it. You play when Jack loses. You play a part that I know. I mean, I knew you were Steve Vai. So like I knew Steve Vai could play that, and so you you just sort of thought, like you mentioned that you maybe thought for a moment about what it might mean to like the Steve Vai. I don't know if the right word for 1986's brand, but like this is the era of the guitar hero, of showing yourself losing in the movie, and then you had to remind yourself that it was a movie. Was that like a thought process that you had, or I just made that up?
Not at all, because to me it was a movie, and I had the whole stage. The whole stage was mine, because I wrote both parts. So I was trying to be, the optics of a movie and a battle like that. It was a fun challenge. It was like the beat music or these little projects that I go and do where I go, oh, I get it. I know what to do. So, interestingly enough, the first time that this was filmed in Crossroads, it took like, I think 12, 18-hour days. And it was a lot of work, because you go up there and the director goes, action, so you're like, all right, and like 10 seconds later, he goes, cut. And I'm like, cut? What do you mean cut? I'm just getting started. We got the scene. Now, then you go away in your trailer for about an hour while they change the lights, and I don't want to be an actor. I like being on stage. It's live. There's no cut. You're the boss, and that suits me. So, but what I did do when we first filmed it, I didn't lose bad enough. The part that I recorded for me to blow it, when we finished filming and they started editing the film, they decided that visually it didn't look like I lost bad enough. So I guess there was a part of me that just couldn't. And they actually, a month after the film ended with the filming, they rebuilt that Devil's Church on the Burbank lot. They got everybody back. I couldn't believe it, the expense. And there was a problem, because I couldn't find the shirt I was wearing, and I cut my hair a little bit.
Continuity, yes.
No. Continuity. So, and all for one angle. So I had to go back into the studio and record something that it was very obvious that I lost.
Right.
So that's why at the end I'm going,
you had to shit the bed, as we said.
And then on the very last note, I decided, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to record 12 guitars, all of them a semitone off key, sharp and flat. So it just sounds like hell when I hit that last note. And that's what I did. And that was my way of saying, look, everybody, I lost. And what's interesting is the original guitar that I used we don't know where it is. I mean, there's been like, guitar scholars that have, written about the guitars, and we just cannot figure out what happened to it, because I have this tendency to just like give away guitars, some to friends, engineers, kids, people, and sometimes they're relatively iconic guitars in a sense. Like I've given away the first 7-string, the first JEM. I must have given away the Crossroads guitar. But the spare that it was the one I threw down, and so it has a big crack in it. That's in a Hard Rock Cafe someplace, I think in Florida.
Do you have, Cindy was her coworker who owns the store, Carmine Street Guitars, Rick Kelly, wanted to know about Joe and who built your original guitars. Do you still have those? And were those built for you on Long Island?
Yeah, Rick's from Long Island as well. He was from Bayshore. So he's been building guitars starting out there for a bit over 55 years now. And I've been there about 13 years with him. But we were talking about all this stuff on and off the past couple of weeks. And he was like, oh, ask him about the JEM and stuff. And
you said Joe, so you're referring to Joe Despagne? Yeah, Joe Despagne was my friend since I could remembering, because he was about a year older than me, and he lived down the street. And it's ever since I could remember, even before kindergarten, Joe was a friend, and we started to hang out a real lot around the age of 12, 13, when I started playing the guitar. And he was more of like a little technician. We were crazy. We were like greasers, And I was progressing pretty quickly, and he was just, kind of playing on the guitar, but he would like to fix them and play with them. And then when I got into the band Rage on Long Island there with my high school friends at the age of 15 or something, Joe Despagne and I were inseparable. He used to build the lighting, flash pots for our show and everything. And we would we'd go out. We were total juvenile delinquents. We'd go out and like on the weekends and steal floodlights from the wealthy homes in Old Westbury for our stage show. It was great. It was like covert, we'd go out and, have little walkie-talkies. Yeah. And then we would do this thing. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent, but I love talking about it.
It's okay. And the statute of limitations is passed, so you can say anything you want.
Yeah.
Larceny.
We used to go to J.C. Penney's, and they used to sell. I can't believe they sold this little rocket powder for little rockets that you would put and shoot up. And they were in these little capsules, hard cardboard, and we'd get them and we'd cut them up and we'd fill up these flash pots. And then when we would do the show, I would do the Led Zeppelin thing, with Jimmy Page. He had the bow and he'd go bump, bump, with the echo, bump, bump. And I'd point and Joe would hit the button and the flash would go off. One time I found myself and was at the high school gym, and there was 2 flash pots, the finale, and they were right at my feet. And I knew that the moment I moved, he was going to hit that button. And I'm going like this, don't hit the button, don't. And I hit this thing, and he hits the flash pots, and it singed my eyebrows, and it totally smoked out the gym. And it was fantastic. Joe started building guitars then, and he was like totally wildly creative. He would just take a block of wood and carve weird stuff, and then put strings on it, So he started making me these guitars. They weren't, you could play them, of course, but they weren't the kind of guitars I would make a main guitar. Like, do you remember the Flame? Guitar?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Lightning Bolt. I mean, I've still got a bunch of his guitars. He was just very...
if you want to give any of those away, by the way.
Didn't the Flame didn't it just reappear?
No, that was the Swiss cheese guitar.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he made that. That was the first guitar that had a handle in it. He was the
I
first
was
one
curious
to do that.
about that too.
Yeah. So Joe and I, as I was evolving, my career was blowing up. I really needed to work with a company that could manufacture and pump out guitars. And Joe's guitars were more specialized.
Obviously, you've been with Ibanez an incredibly long time, but there was like an open call before you went with them. Like how many companies were in the running to work with you at the time? Steve was being pursued by, I think,
every guitar
company.
Yeah, when there's somebody that's starting to take off, I would assume any guitar company wants that artist on their roster because it's good for the brand. So, and I at that time was kind of like skyrocketing when I joined Dave Roth's band, especially. So the companies were interested in having me play their guitars, but I was just interested in having the right guitar. And I had figured that out. I figured out what it was that I wanted. And the allure of receiving free gear, that for many, that's it's something you go through. And I certainly went through it. My early days, there was various companies, like when I was with Alcatrazz and whatnot, where they say, please play this, and they give you these things. And you're like, yes, I'll take that, thank you. Free? Yeah. And, but after a while, you start to realize, well, I really just want what I want, and then you got a pile of crap that you don't know what to do with.
That might describe one of our podcast hosts' current situation.
I see you guys pointing at me.
I'm still,
Get all the shit for free, brother.
I'm still in the excited phase of all of it.
Yeah. So what happened was basically I was getting a lot of stuff, and then the companies wanted me to endorse them, so they started sending me guitars, and I had the JEM. I had actually had 4 of them built by a little shop in L.A. in Hollywood called Performance Guitar. Yeah. So I had them, so I felt I'm done. I got them. This is exactly what I want. Got the cutaway 24 frets with humbuckers that really was new. It had the pickup configuration I liked. It had the body shape that I thought was sexier than a Strat, and it had the whammy bar floating that
You were the first person to do that, right?
As far as I know, yeah. And so I felt content, but then these companies wanted me to play them. And I said, okay, well, here's the guitar I need. If you can make this, let's talk. And inevitably, they all sent me their guitar with my name on it, because a signature series guitar for many companies is usually, it sometimes is a different instrument. It's unique, but most of the time it's that brand with particular frets or pickups or an accoutrement that the artist uses.
Did they at least go the extra mile and cut in a monkey grip in all of them, or not even?
I had a couple that they were makeshift monkey grips. They weren't like a monkey grip. Tom Anderson made me one with a grip. Half of them tried.
There's nothing worse than a bad monkey grip.
Yeah, nothing worse than a bad one. What do you grab it by? So finally, Ibanez, they kind of followed suit where they sent me a guitar. It was, and I didn't like it. It was a Maxis.
Oh, those were like all weird and round, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird, and it was, to me, it was actually hideous, But it was just like all the others I was getting. I was scratching my head saying, well, I told them exactly what I wanted, but okay, that's fine. I wasn't really interested in endorsing. But then when I said to Ibanez, no, thank you, but this is what I want which I said to all the companies, Ibanez was the ones that finally did it. And they did it in like 3 weeks. They made me a gem and it was perfect. And it hasn't changed since, almost 40 years. And so that was another great situation, because now I had a company that could make me the guitar that I really liked. And then they asked me, we'd like to make this as a signature series model for everybody, offer it to anybody that wants it. And at first I thought, well, who's going to want it? Because it's really built around my idiosyncrasies. I don't know if people want that kind of thing. I might assume I wanted it, and the cutaway and the frets, and then it was a very innocent kind of a creation, because and this is important to share for anybody that does creative things. I kind of knew what I had a pull. There was a pull in me for certain things, and it was a very easy decision to say, okay, then that's what I'm going to have, and I got it. So a lot of times people compromise, they say, well, I don't want to have to do that. And to the guitar, that's too weird to bang out the back or something like that. It's not too weird. If something feels right for you, do it, experiment with it. So that's how I came up with the GEM. And then I wasn't really interested in doing the endorsement. So others, because then you're kind of a poster boy. And but it was a great company. Ibanez was, to me, they were the best company, the most perfectly suited, because they were very detail oriented. They're very creative and unbelievably supportive. I couldn't have gotten that kind of support for my crazy ideas from some of the, I don't believe. Well, it's not that I don't believe. I know, because I tried. They just don't want to enter that weird Vai world, and I totally get it.
I mean, I remember it was immediately appealing. I did a Berkeley summer session the summer of '88, and I remember there was a music store like up, not Daddy's, but up the street, and I remember they had the floor.
Daddy's Junkie Music.
There was that across the street from Berkeley, and then if you took a right out the door, there was one like across the.
It was Wurlitzer,
and they had the floral, which I guess is made from your curtains. Is that correct?
Yeah.
With the vine inlay, and I went almost like every other day to just stand
in front.
Yeah, I was like, I need that.
Yeah,
I need that.
I used to do that a lot too.
You did it. I mean, you definitely you connected with the brain of kids.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm. I didn't realize I was doing it. That's the thing. I was just making a guitar that I knew I wanted to play, and I mean, lightning struck. It was such an honor, such a privilege to be able to have an instrument that has had such success.
Speaking of which, because you kind of did it twice, right? You did that, and then the seven string. You created a guitar that completely took on. Did you have any idea that? I mean, it took on a life of its own, right?
Yeah, I knew it would. Only because I knew what it meant to me, the idea of having that low string. I knew that I say I know, I don't know anything. I had a strong premonition that if young kids saw this potential in that low string, they were going to do some outrageous, cool things with it. And they did. The seven string, when it came out, it was kind of a novelty, but I used it on the entire Whitesnake record. And then once that started to die out, it wasn't selling very well, and Ibanez was going to discontinue it. But something in me, And I usually don't do this. Usually I'm like, okay, if it's not selling, then what are you going to do? But I said to them, don't discontinue it because it's not done. Because I know that there's got to be kids out there that are watching me and going, but they just haven't blossomed yet, And boy, was I correct.
You got these kids in Bakersfield buying your guitar.
Yeah, would that have been that's probably the first like Korn, right?
Yeah,
that would have been the first like boom.
Yeah, that was the first thing I heard. The story is I was driving down the street and this music came on the radio, and I immediately recognized the 7th string, and I couldn't believe this music. It was so beautiful, intense, just intense. I pulled my car over and I listened to it and I'm like, okay, there it is. You were right. Now, I didn't know it was Korn. I didn't know until they mentioned it. But I knew that was enough for other bands to pick up on it. So the 7th string transcended Steve Vai, and it was embraced by a generation that was right after me. And it blew up. It really blew up. It created a whole subculture. And that developed into 8-string. Some people play 8 strings and 9-string guitars. I don't do any of that. A little bit. I use the 8-string a little bit. But it was really nice. It was amazing.
What was your first like actual real guitar? And I know that's a subjective term, but the first one that was like
not the tennis racket.
Yeah, not the tennis racket, and not the one with the everybody had then the guitar with the strings that were an inch off the fretboard.
I saw you with a cool SG.
Yeah, I had one of those. My very first guitar was a Tesco Del Rey that I bought from a buddy for $5. And that guitar, I had to retire the tennis racket. And I really enjoyed that. I love that. I mean, you hear people say, I slept with my guitar every night. It never left. I would eat like this, playing with one hand. And I would take it to the toilet. No doubt, I wasn't going to waste 1 minute. I started taking lessons from Joe Satriani too when I was 12. So the next guitar, I had an option of buying his Telecaster or a fake Les Paul, a Univox Les Paul. And I opted for the Les Paul because Jimmy Page played the Les Paul. And I didn't like Telecasters. I didn't think they were like really they weren't rock and roll guitars to me. Ironic that I come to find out way later that all those early Zeppelin records were Telecasters.
Yeah. So the Univox was like a bolt-on? It was probably a bolt-on, right?
Oh, it was a slap-on, I mean, I still have it, but that eventually gave way to the singer in my band at the time when I was 14 had an SG, but it was a weird SG. It had like one single coil pickup. And that became my guitar for a while. But my first real guitar that I embraced as my go-to friend was Stratocaster. It was 76 Stratocaster blonde. I still have it. It's in the studio. And I wanted that guitar, not because I liked the way Strats sounded. I didn't. But it had a whammy bar. And even at a young age, I just knew, and Jimi Hendrix played it. I just knew I saw that whammy bar. And it was like, finding an old friend or something. And I knew I had to have a guitar with a whammy bar. So I got that Strat, and I used that Strat. I was inseparable with that thing for ages 16, maybe 17, all the way through when I joined Alcatrazz.
Wow.
And then it didn't have the sound.
So even with that was your Zappa guitar too, or?
Yeah, that was my main guitar through Frank.
Wow. And that's on, if people want to see it, is that on the website with your collection of all of your guitars? It's visible.
Yeah. It's called the sticker. I think it's called the sticker Strat or something like that.
And then what was next? The performance guitars?
Well, actually, no. Okay, the first guitar I bought with my own money, because I couldn't afford that guitar, the Strat. It was $175. And my mom gave me the money.
Good investment.
Yeah. It all worked out.
Yeah, it all worked out. The first guitar I bought was real guitar, was a double neck. It was a Ventura double neck, which was just like a knockoff. So it was a cheap knockoff of a Gibson double neck. And I worked so hard. I washed dishes. I delivered newspapers. I did everything I could to save every penny to get that double neck. If I had that double neck, I thought I arrived. And I got it. And because Jimmy Page had a double neck, I had to have one, and boy, that was like heaven in a cup, having that guitar. Sitting in my bedroom, I had a double neck. Boy, that mirror, what that mirror saw.
Oh my goodness! Do you still have that one too?
No, it was stolen.
Oh.
But I ended up buying another one, sort of like it, many years later, and now I don't want that.
Right.
I wanted it sort of like having something from your childhood. But that was those two guitars, and then after the Strat, the double neck it made it out to L.A., but I never used it because it got stolen. Then after the Strat, so I was working with Frank, and Frank was an opportunity to try all sorts of different guitars, Frank Zappa. So the next thing I did was I had a guitar built. There was Hollywood Boulevard has a lot of custom guitar shops that will build. And there was a store down there called Valdez Guitars, might still be there. And they built custom guitars. And I thought, wow, custom, I could have anything built that I wanted. So I actually had them build I had 2 guitars built, and those were my next 2 guitars. And I used those. And then I had other ones that I was kind of constructing together, but I never bought a new guitar. I never went out to a store and said, I like that, I'll take it.
Wow. Never off the rack. Never.
When I was on tour, sometimes I like going to pawn shops and stuff and buying pawn. I would, you go into these pawn shops and you can get a guitar that's just was laying under somebody's bed for a while.
Yeah.
So occasionally I'd do that, but I don't like new guitars. They feel too new. It takes long to break a guitar in and, get your DNA into it and become friendly with it.
Right.
You develop a relationship.
Yeah.
And new guitars are just not, they don't do that for me. I don't like the way they sound. I know it sounds weird. It could be psychological. I could be off my rocker, but it's the way it is, Yeah, I don't think I've ever bought a guitar. I'm sure if I say that, I'm sure somebody's going to say, oh, no, you came into my shop and bought this. Then the Gems came. The next guitar, well, I got some of the Despagne guitars. They were more kind of novelty. But then the Gems came, the original Gems, and I named them the Gem as a sort of because my friend Joe started his little company and I was helping him. It was Joe JEM. And, I was helping support him, giving him money for buying bodies and necks and things like that. So one of the ways that I wanted to support him was take the name and put it on the guitar. So that's how the Gem got its name. It was a Joe Despagne originally called his guitars Gems.
You're a good friend.
Yeah, he was my buddy. He was my best friend.
And he could probably put you in jail, right? He knows things about you that
we both have been there together.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we get chased from the cops every weekend. So much fun. Innocent, fun stuff.
Sure.
nothing nefarious. Well,
Of course.
maybe a little. But after I had those performance guitars made, and I used those through Roth, then Ibanez came in, and it's been the Ibanez JEM since.
And it's been in production continuously, right?
Yeah, in 2027 will be 40 years.
Oh,
Wow.
you got to make one out of just gold.
Yeah, right. I always wanted to say it was the longest running signature series guitar in history, but it's not, because George Benson signed with Ibanez a month before me, and his signature guitar came out like a month before mine, and his is still, I believe it's still in production. And the Les Paul, I'm told, is not a signature.
Wow.
Series. I'm talking about stuff that doesn't matter.
No, I mean, it totally matters.
Yes.
Wait, this is the stuff. What do you think people, like us talk about?
Yeah, this is basically our text thread.
Yeah,
this sort of going deep.
Steve Vai, this has really been an amazing treat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. You guys are doing great stuff. I love watching you. I love hearing you guys talk about what you're passionate about, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. Thanks.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
and good luck with the beat tour.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
sure you'll
excited.
destroy everything.
We'll be in front row, no shirts.
Yes.
And come by Carmine Street at some point
Yeah.
and say hello.
You got it.